there's a difference between absolute failure and technical failure. Okay, people need to be aware of this, because absolute failure is basically when your muscle is completely fatigued and you cannot physically do another rep. Okay, that's absolute failure. Technical failure is when you decide to stop because your form has deviated to what you consider optimal form.
It sounds simple, but it can be kind of like a difficult one if you're not understanding like the subjectiveness of, right, well, is this actually appropriate for my goal? Is there any point, even though I can technically do more reps here, is my form appropriate for what it is I'm trying to accomplish here? So whenever we've spoken about form and technique, etc., most of the time it's been in the context of trying to explain to our listeners that it's not got that much to do with pain and injury. But when it comes to completing a specific goal, maybe it does matter. So for example, let's say the whole idea of this episode is about building muscle hypertrophy, right? Okay, let's say on my training program I have Romanian deadlifts. I'm going through my set, everything's fine. I've got a nice, straight, neutral spine. You know, Stu McGill and that fucking bike lock twat, Andrew Locke, would be super proud how straight my spine is. But anyway, you should try tightening it. Oh, that's awful. You'd have to edit that out. Yeah, produce a couple of links, fucking donut. But yeah, let's say I've got a really straight back, so that I know that as I'm doing this Romanian deadlift, most of it is from pushing my hips back. I'm hitting my objective of, well, if I'm pushing my hips back, I'm targeting my hamstrings and my glutes here. So my mission is, my objective is good so far. But things start getting tough. It gets to a point now where, okay, I am doing the movement, but actually most of the movement is now coming from my spine rounding, so I'm not actually pushing my hips back anymore. Okay, do you know what? Since my whole objective was to target my hamstrings and my glutes, which meant that I needed to be lengthened and contracted, but now because most of the movement is coming from my back and not my hamstrings or my glutes, okay, maybe I'm going to count this as my RPE now, or my reps in reserve. I think this is failure now, because okay, I could push out some rough reps, but all I'm doing is I'm just increasing the fatigue for no reason. I've already stopped hitting the muscles as effectively as I want to be hitting them. I might as well stop. But you notice how I didn't say anything about, oh, it's because it's to save your back. No, it's simply to do with the objective. You know, if it was about strength and all I cared about was doing as many reps as possible, I'd keep going. But the goal here is hypertrophy. The goal is lengthening and contracting these muscles.
I think the easiest thing, like the one comparison I always see in a gym, is when people do things like bent over rows and they start to really shrug the weight in. So instead of keeping completely still and just literally pulling the arms in to squeeze into the back, they literally like have this momentum where they're literally going into a vertical fucking bench press where they're literally leaning back so much to get the weight up. And that when you see that once again, you're not targeting the correct muscle groups there, so you're just basically fatiguing yourself for no reason. Yeah. So that's an example of technical failure. If you kept going,
another example,
you could keep going, but what's the point?
Just because you reminded me by saying vertical bench press there. Another one is like the overhead press. Let's say you was targeting your shoulders, right, with an overhead press with a barbell, but it became so difficult. You're arching your back so much, it's now become a standing bench press. Yeah. It's now gone from a vertical press to a horizontal press. Now, if it was to do with strength, I'd be like, fuck, that's impressive. Because I don't care about the muscles he's targeting, or she. All I care about is that they're getting the barbell overhead. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. Crack on. It looks tough, but crack on. But the goal is hypertrophy. My whole idea, or your whole objective here, is to be targeting the muscle, the shoulders. Well, actually, it's looking more like a bench press now. So, okay, yeah, it's targeting the shoulders to an extent, but it's no longer targeting what we'd want it to be targeting in an overhead press. So, do you see what I mean? But then there's another argument here, Bill, and so I've spoken before about how there's evidence to show that partial reps or half reps, as they're also known as, they can actually still produce hypertrophy as long as they're in like in a lengthened position. They can still benefit. So this is an argument we can kind of have here where it's like, well, okay, what in the case of like isolation exercises, what about the bicep curl? So at first I'm dropping the dumbbells down by my sides. I'm able to get them all up to my shoulders. Great. But those last couple of reps, I can only get them halfway. Now, technically, I could still keep going because they're in a lengthened position. So, okay, if we talk about technique and form breakdown, yeah, my reps don't technically look the same now, but I'm still able to get them from that lengthened position to a somewhat contracted position. So I think that it comes down to your choice, whether you're going to say, okay, am I contracting these enough now that I think I'm still getting something out of it? Because even if you're only able to get them at like a 90-degree angle, you're probably still getting something out of it. Just because you can't get them all the way up anymore. You know, we do have evidence that suggests that partial reps, as long as the muscle is started in a lengthened position, you can still get gains from that. So it's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? It depends, as they say.